I'm Hayley Watson, and my issue focuses on dyslexia and how it impacts on children's learning in the classroom. Many people all over the world have to deal with the cognitive and intellectual disability of dyslexia. Flora and Iowa in 2009 estimate that as many as 43 million people in the United States of America from all economic and ethnic backgrounds have dyslexia, showing the vast population of students within the schooling system who would need to have teachers who know what strategies and actions they can take to help facilitate the students with dyslexia by changing and adapting their teaching practices. That is why, during this presentation, I will be talking about what dyslexia entails, looking at how dyslexia falls under the different models of disability, the pedagogical implications and policies, and also different strategies that can be implemented within the classroom to help facilitate students with dyslexia. What dyslexia is. Dyslexia is often a term that is misunderstood within the educational setting, which is why it is important to clearly define what dyslexia actually entails. The International Dyslexia Association 2002 defines dyslexia as a learning disability that is neurobiological in its origin. It is characterized by having trouble with fluent word recognition, poor spelling, and decoding abilities. As a consequence of this, it may lead to problems in reading comprehension, reduced reading experience, and therefore can lead to decreased vocabulary and background knowledge. A common misconception about dyslexia is that the words jump around on the page, but dyslexia is a problem with language processing at the phenomenon level rather than a visual problem. Dyslexia is a lifelong disability that people do not grow out of, but research by the Australian Government Department of Education in 2014, cited by Seri and Hamoy 2015, suggests that the earlier the intervention, the more effective it will be to help students overcome the challenges and hurdles they face with this disability. As people with dyslexia have the same intellectual capabilities as all others, they are just faced with the challenge of a unique learning style. Models of disability. After gaining a broad comprehension and understanding of what dyslexia is, we can now make connections to the different models of disability it would fall under. Dyslexia is present within the medical model of disability, as the individual is considered having a mental impairment and the disability is within the person. This model views that a disability needs to be medically cured so that the individual can function within society. Britain 2014, as cited within Hagel and Hodge 2016, states that there are negative perceptions of disability that are embedded within this model. So a teacher would need to make sure that they don't only view a disability through the medical model, as this model can influence the way individuals within society interact and talk about individuals with disabilities. Hagel and Hodge 2016. Through the view of the medical model, it can lead to students with dyslexia having low self-esteem and feeling as though their options in relation to education and academic success is limited. So as a teacher, you need to make sure you accept everyone and don't portray any negative connotations onto anyone. Within some cultures, if a person was to be diagnosed with dyslexia, it could be seen as a curse or bad karma, as some cultures believe that disabilities are the person's own fault as they have brought it upon themselves from bad behaviour. This could lead to an attitudinal barrier for the individual, as they may become socially isolated from their peers who may not want to work or sit next to them, as they could be considered an evil spirit, connecting to the moral model of disability. As a teacher, I would try to educate the students within the classroom about how it isn't a curse to try and enhance and create an inclusive space for all. Dyslexia can even be considered under the personal tragedy model, as a teacher may consider it a tragedy that they have to tailor their lesson plans to accommodate the individual student with dyslexia. But the teacher needs to make sure that they follow the Australian Disability Policy Framework of 1992 to change their outlook and perception of a disability. As briefly mentioned before, isolation and exclusion can be a consequence of having a disability, but as Hagel and Hodge 2016 say, through the use of the social model of disability, it will help to remove perceptions of individuals with impairments as being less able to participate with members of society. Bluston 2012, as cited within Hagel and Hodge 2016, argues with the outlook of the social model, as he says that there is nothing inherently disabling about having an impairment, but it is society that limits their options and abilities. So by implementing this outlook within the classroom setting, not only would it create an inclusive place for all, but it means that teachers would be expected to change their practices to help facilitate all students within the classroom. How dyslexia affects children in the classroom setting. Within a primary classroom setting, students who have dyslexia are faced with a number of different challenges. One of these is that the curriculum is designed to fit the average student. Therefore, when it comes to tests and exams, the student with dyslexia can be at a real disadvantage. For example, in the NAPLAN, a student with dyslexia wouldn't be able to demonstrate their skills fully, as being able to answer the questions is heavily based upon being able to read the question and having decoding abilities to understand what the question is asking you. Therefore, it results in a student not being able to demonstrate all of their skills and receiving a lower mark, as they may have not been able to understand what the question was asking them in the first place. Ways in which teachers could accommodate this is by giving the student extra time to complete tests and tasks, as students with dyslexia take longer to read, write, and proofread. Another issue within the primary classroom is that students with dyslexia may be viewed as lazy and unmotivated. William and Leach 2010 say that students who have limited academic success can often feel frustrated, which results in them avoiding doing the task that is at hand. So if teachers don't know the indicators and symptoms of dyslexia, they may view that the child is just being lazy and misbehaving. It relates back to Pierre Bourdieu's theory of habitus. Bourdieu, as cited within Stugee 2015, says habitus is when we form an unconscious bias for behaviour, thoughts and emotions in every possible situation because of the experiences we have encountered and the people we are surrounded by. So the teacher could make a granted assumption that the student is just showing signs for being lazy, as they can't pick up the signs that the student has dyslexia. So it is imperative for the teacher to make sure that they are looking at why a student is not participating and what is behind the thought process of the child, instead of the teacher just having not doxa. Because if the student is yelled at for not doing their work, it could lead to lower self-esteem and more frustration, which results in the student avoiding more schoolwork and therefore decreases their education. Over the long term, it could lead to decreased job opportunities as they don't have the right qualifications and could reduce their culture and economic capital. Demonstrating why it is so important for teachers to learn and recognise the signs of dyslexia so they can help the students. Pedagogical implications and policies. For the teacher to create an inclusive and accepting classroom, they need to make sure that they consider the students' priorities, their motivations, their readiness levels, their learning styles, and personal experiences. The teacher would need to make sure that they are fair to all students and make sure that they create an inclusive educational setting that will accommodate any disability, including dyslexia. Waddlington, Jacob and Bailey, 1996, suggests that students who have dyslexia will learn and process information more effectively when the teachers present the information in an auditory, tactile, kinesthetic and visual format, as it allows the information to travel along multiple pathways in the brain, therefore increasing the chance of a student's understanding and retaining the information. Even though this could become an implication for the teacher, as they would need to put in extra work preparing multiple formats for presenting the information, it would help cater for not only students who have dyslexia, but also the different learning styles within the classroom. Flora and Iwin 2009 state that students with dyslexia also need explicit instruction and intensive one-on-one time to help them understand the content. Due to this, it may impact on the student's education within the classroom, because if the teacher was not always focused on the student with dyslexia, it could lead to decreased learning for the other peers. So the teacher needs to evaluate how much time should be spent with each student so that they can accommodate for everyone within the classroom. A teacher needs to make sure that they are communicating with not only the student but also the student's parents or other professionals such as therapists to see if any circumstances outside the classroom could be affecting the student's concentration or learning, and so they know the circumstances and can help to support the child in the classroom in any other way. Ways in which a teacher can check to see if they are following the correct guidelines and behaviour for creating an inclusive classroom is by checking and following the Australian Disability Policy Framework of 1992. as this framework makes sure that no person with a disability is discriminated against, that the student with a disability does not have limited access but is offered the education on the same basis as all other peers, and that the teacher makes reasonable adjustments to enable them to participate in education in the same way as all the other students. By the teacher making sure that they are implementing these policies within the classroom, it will not only create an inclusive classroom, but will also help students with dyslexia, as the teacher can make sure that they are making adjustments within the curriculum, their assessment, and their own teaching practices to help accommodate the learning of the child with dyslexia. Strategies. Being a pre-service teacher myself, I believe that it is very important for everyone in the classroom to feel welcome and for everyone to be viewed and treated equally. As a future teacher, I will make sure that the activities and learning is tailored for everyone within the class. There are a number of different strategies that one could use in the classroom to help accommodate the learning of a student who has dyslexia. One of these strategies is using different mediums when presenting information. I would present the information using both visual, auditory, and a kinesthetic format, so it would help the student with dyslexia retain and understand the information better. I would allow the student who has dyslexia longer time to read, write, and proofread during activities and tests, and will give them an option of using text-to-speech software or doing the test through an oral examination so they can still demonstrate their knowledge and not have to rely on their reading skills to pass the test. Students with dyslexia often have problems in reading comprehension, reduced reading experience, which can lead to decreased vocabulary and background knowledge. I would implement tiered teaching within my classroom to help support this. By using this approach, it would allow me to teach the same lesson or unit just with different tasks. Within tiered teaching, I would use Bloom's taxonomy as it is a great model to use to help implement lower order and higher thinking skills. For example, if a class was studying geography and looking at European countries, you could have a group discussion but use Bloom's taxonomy to present the information in a different way so all the students can demonstrate their learning, as you could ask one student to list some European countries, whereas you could ask another to describe some European countries. When taking this approach, however, I will need to make sure that I'm not watering down the curriculum, but just presenting the information in a different way so the student can still demonstrate their learning. As a future teacher, I would also want to make sure that I'm creating lesson plans that are relevant to the students in my classroom and their interests, so it increases their motivation and even gets the student with dyslexia who may feel frustrated with their academic success, hopeful and excited to participate within the activities. In summary, dyslexia is a cognitive and intellectual disability that affects many people. It is characterised by having trouble with fluent word recognition, poor spelling and decoding abilities. It falls under the medical, moral, personal tragedy and social model of disability. There are a number of implications that both the student with dyslexia, their peers and the teacher could encounter within the classroom. But by the teacher following and implementing the Australian Disability Policy Framework of 1992 within their classroom, it will create an inclusive and welcoming space for all students. After looking at different strategies to help facilitate students with dyslexia in the classroom, we can see that there are many different ways to accommodate for this disability within a classroom setting. Future work that could be done in relation to help facilitate students with dyslexia in a primary school is implementing a policy that helps teachers detect the symptoms and signs for dyslexia. This could be done by introducing an intervention practices within pre-service years of training and implementing an early intervention program into the schools. By doing this, it means that teachers will not only hold any misconceptions about what dyslexia is, but they'll be able to help with early intervention, which is very important, as SHEAR 2010 states that it has been proven to be highly effective in remedying dyslexia, showing how much impact this policy could have to help students with dyslexia overcome the learning difficulties that they have to face. Thank you for listening.